You know, I was gonna have an intro for this, like I normally do, but seeing as what we're gonna be talking about, I'm kind of like, you know what? Is it best to have an intro or is it not best to have an intro? And eventually I was just like, nah, let's just go right into the nitty gritty. But obviously, you know, when it comes to discussions like these, I could do it by myself, but there's no fun in that. There's honestly no fun in that, and y'all know the drill. Someone from the crew always likes to tag along and join me on these things, and this one's no different.
Hello, everyone. James S Cassidy here. Surprised to see me? I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's been what? What was the last one we did? Was it the Yu Yu Hakusho one? I think.
Oh yeah, Rurouni
Oh,
Kenshin Yu Yu Hakusho. Remember?
mm-hmm.
That's a couple months then. I mean, we did the Rurouni Kenshin one. Everyone's like, "You got to do the Yu Yu Hakusho." I'm like, "All right."
Yep, I'm still waiting for responses, guys. What do y'all want us to do next? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be down for doing whatever, but depends on how passionate y'all were. So I was like, I could probably wait. See what y'all want to do next.
Believe me, we're in the old and the new. So if you ever wanted us to talk about an older anime, feel free to mention it. So what are we going to talk about today, Lucky G?
We're going to be talking about something that kind of came up from just a casual conversation, and I believe me, guys, this actually was just a pretty basic conversation that James and I were having.
Our definition of casual conversation. Air quotes.
Casual in quotes, but no, like I was just sitting around one day, just hanging out with my cousins. I was just talking about Fairy Tail and a couple other like video ideas, and then I thought, you know, what if we did a video that can be considered controversial, yet engaging at the same time? And I think that piqued your interest a little bit. So I said, what if we did a what if Fairy Tail is actually better than Naruto video?
Yep, Cinderella is totally about communism. Oh, right. Wrong conversation. Wrong fairy tale, for that matter.
I see what you did there.
You know me.
Mm-hmm. But if y'all remember the old school days when we were doing that our Saga podcast, well, with James as the co-host, not co-host, but as the host himself.
Hey, don't forget Steve.
And Steve.
He did his part.
Steve did his part. I think there were rumors around that 4Live did his fair share of hosting too. I'm joking about that. Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. I'll let him answer that.
Behind the scenes. The video. No.
A video that might never be shared.
So you saying we're going to talk about Fairy Tail, the shonen anime today?
Mm-hmm. But there is an aspect of the Naruto podcast that James would always do. And I'm going to bring that back in for this. And it's going to be, instead of it being on Naruto, we're going to be shifting it over to Fairy Tail. So, James, I'm going to ask you two important questions, okay?
Okay.
What got you into Fairy Tail? And what was your favorite moment? And what did you stick around with it? So technically it's like a 3-part question.
Well, surprisingly, the thing that got me into Fairy Tail, actually, more accurate would be the person that got me into Fairy Tail is you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because at the time we were still into Naruto, and I wasn't that big into the other shonen, and you came up to me and go, hey, if you really like Naruto and all, and this was during part 1, mind you, this is when it was actually, good.
Yeah.
You're like, if you like Naruto, you'll like Fairy Tail, I mean, 4Live is begging me to watch Black Clover at this point, but, But at the time, you were like, hey, man, you should like Fairy Tail. It's a really good, story. It's like Naruto, but, everything like that, and you should check it out. I mean, and so I did in my off times. It's been a while. I mean, it's been a long time since we had that discussion, but, you, basically.
Huh.
As for my favorite moment, I really don't have one. I mean, I hate to be like that and say that there is no FOMO, but it's the whole reason why we're discussing it today. And essentially, the whole thing is my favorite.
True.
I'm better off listing moments that I hate than moments that I love. Specifically, the whole series is one big favorite moment for me. So
Yeah.
I can tell you my
And
favorite characters.
I was going to say this as the last part of the question. What made you stick around with it?
Okay, so a little bit of history with it.
Mhm.
I was into it, then stopped doing it because I'm mostly focused on the podcast and Naruto. So there was a time when it was purely Naruto 100%, and then on the off chance I did Fairy Tail every now and then, or Attack on Titan, or one of the other ones. But it was just because Naruto kept disappointing me over and over again. I really wanted to read a shonen that, how do I want to say, follow through. One that was satisfying, even if it didn't do what I expected it to do, it still was satisfying. Put it that way. So Fairy Tail had everything. I mean, it played it safe every now and then, and obviously we can go into more discussion about this, but it just kept me around longer because whatever it did, no matter how cliche it was, it just did it right.
I did.
And even the worst moments, like it's like Avatar: The Last Airbender with me. It's like even the worst moments are pretty decent, with the best
Mhm.
moments being amazing as they are. So
Yeah,
it's like asking Avatar: The Last Airbender, "What's your favorite moment?" Well, even the worst moments of Avatar could be your favorite
it could be.
because it was just fun. It was a fun shonen. It is everything I wanted out of a shonen plus more.
In Avatar's case, what was it, the Great Divide episode?
Yeah, the Great Divide. I mean, it's one of my best moments in Avatar when they're just like, "Oh, look, the Great Divide. Let's just keep flying." Yeah. Uh, good times.
Good times. Actually, the funny thing is, I think Fairy Tail actually had something similar to that. Believe it or not, which I was kind of going like, huh, that's actually kind of funny.
It's great when a series can lampshade its own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're Gintama, which you basically lampshade everybody else's mistakes. But
Pretty much.
we'll do a review of that series later down the road. How about that? If y'all want to see that
I'll
one.
just say this in terms of Gintama's case. The episode when Gintoki destroyed the time machine when he thought it was an alarm clock.
Yeah. Yeah. Though surprisingly, with Fairy Tail, I mean, there was a kind of pairing war, but it wasn't that bad. I don't think anybody walked away disappointed. I mean, even if your pairing that you love so much didn't happen, you didn't walk away disappointed. You were like, okay, I understand.
I think what was interesting about the pairings for Fairy Tail is like you could ship Natsu with two different characters.
Hmm.
In this case, being Lasana and Lucy, but you could totally get why you would go for either one.
Okay, I know a favorite moment. I just thought about it.
What the?
I know my favorite moment, and I could think of For Life for this one because now it's my favorite moment. It was a fight with I'm gonna butcher these names. Urza, Erza,
Urza, yeah.
Urza. Okay. It was facing off the one character. Spoilers for anybody. Spoilers. She's facing off the one character. I can't remember the name. Where like she got all her senses blocked.
Was it Kyoka? I think it might have been her.
I think so. But it's like she had her like sight, hearing, touch, smell, all her five senses blocked, and she still managed to detect the person there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I just remember for like putting the uh Gurren Lagann glasses on her, going, "She's too bullshit." Yes, that's the For Life. That has to be one of my favorite moments in the series.
Here's the funny thing about that, though. And I completely forgot about this, actually. Like, at first I was like, okay, you know what, that's a little... okay, that's way too much of a stretch. And then I remember, wait a minute, she has an artificial eye, so technically there's some levity to that.
Oh, this is a good series.
Like, you won't think about it at first, but then when you really start to analyze it, like, actually, no, that kind of makes sense. It's a bit of a reach, but it's got some sense to it.
Urza is still one of my favorite characters, though.
Mm-hmm.
She's too bullshit. Yeah.
Thank you, Happy.
Where do you want to start with this first?
I guess I could talk about how I got into Fairy Tail. It was me. It was actually through word of mouth that I heard about it. People were talking about it. It was actually through the anime, believe it or not. And I gave it a shot. I was like, you know what? It seems interesting. You remember the big term people were calling the big three?
Yes.
And people were associating Fairy Tail with that. And I was like, you know, I'm curious why people are calling it that. So I gave it a watch, and I thought it was interesting. And my favorite moment, believe it or not, has to do with Jalal during the Tower of Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you find out that his twin brother Seagrain was actually never his twin brother. It was actually a thought projection. And I remember sitting there going like, okay, you know what? That was pretty cool. But you would never think about it at first, but then when you look at all the clues, like, actually, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a Redbone meme.
Mm-hmm.
You know that one, right?
Yeah.
Hey, hey, hey. What?
And now comes the last part of the question, which is, what kept me around with Fairy Tail, even with like all the negativity going around? Here's an interesting thing about me: is my first ever manga series I read was Rave Master, which, funny enough, it's by the same guy that did Fairy Tail.
You don't say.
But I didn't realize that at first. I remember I was just looking up some stuff about Fairy Tail, and I clicked on the author, and I was like, let me see what he's done. And I looked at all his works, and I saw Rave Master, and I was like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that one story I read when I was in 3rd grade, that was by him? Okay, now I'm actually kind of interested in reading Fairy Tail and seeing where it goes, knowing that he was the guy who did that.
Yeah.
So that's what kept me around with
like
both
watching
watching Fairy Tail and then keeping up with the anime, with the manga. But what were you saying?
No. I was just. It's kind of like watching a series about mass destruction and Armageddon and everything, and realizing that's about it's made by Urobuchi, who did Aldi and Zero.
Yeah.
And it's a personal meme, but every time I ever see like that mass destruction in any kind of anime, I hear that theme song. Asekai, Asekai. It just fits.
It does. But in a sense, it's kind of my big takeaway as to like how I got into Fairy Tail and my favorite moment and what kept me around for the series as a whole. But I think now we can actually get into the crux of the discussion, if you will, which is Fairy Tail actually better than Naruto?
How dare you, sir?
I know.
Greta Thunberg, how dare you?
I can imagine all the people clicking on this saying, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Like, I'm expecting that.
Hitting on their keyboards as hard as they can. Fairy Tail better than Naruto? This is an outrage. We must hang Lucky Chi from a spike. We're going to be very civil about this, but if you don't mind, Lucky Chi, I just want to clarify something with everybody right now.
Right.
It's a little rant, and I apologize, but listen. Myself and Lucky Chi here, we want to look at these series as writers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what does that mean? We want to see how the author thinks, how they solve problems, how they write the story as it is, and how it draws us. We know many different styles and many different ways that people can write a story. And we're not going to judge people by how they want to express how they are in a story. Now, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. This is just basically what defines a cliche from a trope. But more than anything, we're looking at these stories as more from a writer standpoint, like I said, because we want to express how much what works in a writing scenario.
Yeah.
Now, I am so sick of every time I want to have these meaningful discussions with people, and all they ever do is like, well, you're just this character fan, and you're just upset because this character didn't get this, or you're just a pairing fan, and you're just upset because no. Look, yes, we may have our OTPs or something like that, but at the end of the day, we're writers first, and we like these stories for how they are written, and we're going to analyze these series for how they are written. Now, if some of you in the comment section, if you want to talk to us as fellow writers, as a story, breaking it down and everything like that, great. We welcome your discussion. Please leave a comment. If we're wrong, we're wrong. If you disagree, you disagree. We welcome it. We challenge anybody to challenge our viewpoints on this. What we don't like is the fact that people just label us as something so simple. The reason why we're doing videos like this is because we want everyone to understand why we view these series as the way we do. We love these series. Even Naruto, we loved it, right?
We did.
And this is the reason why we're so passionate about it. If we didn't care about it, we wouldn't be talking about it. Same with Fairy Tail here. So if anybody's going to come into the comment section or anything of that nature to just argue with us on petty, stupid stuff, just don't leave a comment at all. Just leave, okay? Because we don't want to deal with that. I want to deal with more people that want to have an honest discussion, even if you disagree with us, even if you want to, and I'm going to use air quotes, fight on us about certain points. That's fine. Great. I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear how you think. That's the beauty of discussion. But if you're going to come in here and be like, oh, well, you're just upset because the blah, 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 just leave it at the door. We don't want you. I'm sorry. And I hate to be that harsh.
For 7 years. At this point, we're just like,
Yeah. And I just want you all to understand where we're coming from on this. And I already discussed with Lucky about this one. There's a difference between a cliche and a trope. A trope is something when you use like a predictable outcome, but it works. If you can write it in there that works and has a meaningful way of development into that, then great. We have this. A cliche is when you do it wrong. If you're using drama to drive the plot, you're doing it wrong. So I just want to get that out of the way. That Lucky and I, we're going to do this as writers watching this series. Now, if you like a character or certain things, great. Support them. Love them. Have posters of them. I don't give a crap. It's what you do want to do. I'm just looking at this from a writer standpoint, good and bad.
And here's the thing, guys. We're not going to completely favor one side over another because let's be fair. Both Naruto and Fairy Tail respectively have their flaws in more ways than one.
Nothing is perfect.
No, nothing. I mean, even going as far back as April. And James knows about this. As great as Attack on Titan was, when you get to that last stretch, it's a mess.
Yeah.
To say the least.
But I will give praise. If that's what the writer wanted to do, whether it failed or succeeded, praise on you for going for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it failed, personally.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And no, I wasn't expecting anything different from it. There were some things I expected and some things I didn't. I just think you could have did it better. For the series that nobody gets a happy ending, we're not expecting the main characters to get a happy ending. What we are expecting is not to act crazy with it, which is what Attack on Titan did. They really went out of left field, but you tried, didn't work, great, And I think that's why we're so harsh on Naruto so much, because I can't emphasize this enough. It just feels like the writer gave up.
It does.
Went with the quickest solutions, the quickest everything. Now, for whatever reason, we don't know. I could list 100 reasons why Kishimoto did what he did, but it's just the fact that you just gave up. And you went with the easiest and quickest route possible and the most anticlimactic, which is lazy. You spent 15 years on this thing and you're going to blow it like that.
Pretty much.
So it's like my issues with Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super or anything like that. Don't pretend it's Shakespeare, because it's not.
No.
Is it a good series that you can sit down and eat popcorn and just fill in the action like some Michael Bay movie? Yes. If that's all you're looking for, great. It's a great series. If you're looking
for an actual story, I'd argue Dragon Ball has more of that than Dragon Ball.
Yeah, it has more holes was cheese. Let me put it that way. Toriyama, is, but then again, Toriyama never like bragged that he was such a great writer.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, credit where credit is due. Know where the limits are, but don't pretend it's more than what it is.
Yeah.
That's all we're saying. For Fairy Tail, it's gonna suffer from the same shonen tropes that all the other shonens have. Yes, we know this. We understand this. The question is, did it use it to its most effectiveness, or did it just waste it? And I think that's what we're going to discuss today.
That's the question of the day. What better way to start off than with the story of Fairy Tail? Which, honestly, is actually pretty simple.
It actually reads very similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you think about it.
It does?
Yeah.
I'm curious. What makes you say that?
Well, isn't Natsu's age unknown?
Yeah.
Isn't he a lot older than we think he is?
He's supposed to be.
Yeah, and then he was locked away in a time stasis, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
During the Battle of Fairy Tail, because it was him and Gajia were stuck, and it's wait a second. It's anyone past the age of 80, so
yeah.
Why are they stuck there? Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
It does.
And then you have these characters that are much older than they actually are, and in a way, you have not the main character Natsu. I don't want to say child of prophecy, but
he's not. He's not.
He's not. But there's more to him than you think.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of destined to do great things. The only difference is whether or not the other characters acknowledge this. But it's a very similar premise if you think about it. I mean, on a basic core level. I mean, I'm not talking about grandeur. It's a copy paste. I'm so you have a character who's really young, who essentially enters some kind of time stasis and then wakes up many years later, and essentially he's a product of myth.
The thing about that's interesting is that we don't find that until super late in the series, but we do. The gist of what we know of Natsu is that he was raised by a dragon, and then his dragon just disappeared. I was why?
He is known as Dovahkiin, Dragonborn. Mr. John. But it's a great opening. And instead of laying it out flat with exposition, we don't know about this until much later.
Nuh-uh.
Which is great, because then you start off with this clean slate.
Yeah. I mean, really, it just opens up with him on the train, and he's just trying to find Igneel. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And along the way, he finds Lucy, just as he's walking around town.
My God, find some cute, quirky girl to talk to. There she is.
There's that too, and we may eventually talk about that at some point. Well,
yeah. By the way, I'm curious. Did you have an OTP with this one?
For Fairy Tail?
Yeah.
I didn't have an OTP per se, but I did like Natsu's relationship with Lee-san, and I thought that would have made sense. But, and this is gonna come as a surprise to some people, I could see how Natsu and Lucy could get together. So I was fine with either one.
I didn't have an OTP.
You didn't?
No. Because,
I think the OTP for Fairy Tail would have been Mavis and Seraph. I think. It would have been those two.
Yeah. But when it came to, Fairy Tail, I didn't have one.
I was going to say this, maybe Gajil and Levy?
Yeah. Wasn't there Gray and Erza, too?
Gray and, what was it? Juvia was one. And I think for Urza it was her and Jalal.
Yeah. I didn't follow the Fairy Tail pairing war.
No, but out of the main character ships, I'd say maybe Urza and Jalal were the ones that I kind of went for.
I was just curious because I didn't have one. Naruto I was so engrossed with at the time, I didn't have one for Fairy Tail.
Here's the funny thing, and you mentioned it earlier. I don't think there was much of a pairing war, though. when it came to the fandom. Like, I think everyone had their different takes on who should have ended up with who, but there wasn't like anything like super super toxic about it. It wasn't like with Naruto or even more recently with Attack on Titan, because
Yeah. I mean, from what I remember from seeing, I mean, it was there, but it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like a violent, bloody OTP war pairing war. Naruto was basically the king of it at the time.
it was.
It was a bloody massacre, and then the next one was Bleach.
Oh, with Ichiruki and Ichihime, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, and then third was Fairy Tail. That was the most one I heard. But when I say like it's a third, like oh, it was pretty, but it actually wasn't. I mean,
Yeah,
if you consider like from a scale from 1 to 10, how bloody was the war with 10 being the worst, like Naruto was at 11, 12.
it was.
Bleach was like probably 7, 8,
I'd say so.
and then Fairy Tail was all the way down to like maybe 2, 3.
Yeah,
I mean, there
maybe
were some.
four at the most, but it was
Yeah, I
pretty
mean, there were some
minuscule.
skirmishes, but mostly there wasn't much like banter back and forth because mostly everyone was so focused on Naruto and that pairing war. It's like when you have the World War going on, the minor civil wars and everything were nothing.
Right?
And then I mean, that's what I know. I mean, it was there because I saw it, and I know I saw it, but it just didn't make that much of an impact because mostly everybody was like, okay, it's going to be Natsu and Lucy. Oh, no, it's going to be Gray and this person. Oh, it's going to be Erza and this person. Oh, we want the Natsu and Erza, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was there, but it wasn't as impactful. It didn't, like, dominate the anime forums, or so to speak. That's why I say it's third, because it was there enough to be noticed, but not enough to make an impact.
Right.
We all know I'm a Natsu Gray fan.
I'm pretty sure they exist.
They're there.
Especially after they were doing. And I want to send it to you specifically because I always get a kick out of seeing this.
Reminds me of the Mustang Edward fans.
I just sent it to you through Skype. You'll see what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Y'all don't see this. It's just really funny. It's just Natsu and Gray. So
I always get a kick out of that every time I see it.
doing the can.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't think Naruto and Sasuke acting like that. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Oh, man. Do you have to go there? Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And we ain't stopping.
No, we're not.
Sasuke!
And that's something we're going to get into as well.
Naruto, because Sasuke sounded dumb.
But, like, honestly, though, realistically speaking, like, Fairy Tail at its core it's a very simple tale. Like, Natsu and his group of friends, going out on missions and, protecting their home.
It played it safe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the best way I could put it. It works, but it played it safe. It didn't really go out there. This is why it didn't make much of an impact. It didn't really, like, push the envelope of what we know is shown in today. It followed this, but I will say this. More or less was exactly like Naruto and some of the tropes, but unlike Naruto, Fairy Tail did it right. And I think that's what makes it stand out, is that Naruto went crazy with the concepts of later down the road. It went from like a safe to a crazy. Fairy Tail decided, no, we're going to go with the safety reason because this is how the story is going to be written, and it works. I can't think of a single moment that felt truly out of place. Naruto, I can think of a few reasons, especially after the pain arc, but,
Like I said, there are aspects in Fairy Tail where you're like, okay, there are things you could have probably altered, sure, but honestly speaking, if you ask me, I think Fairy Tail gets too much overhated these days compared to, like, say what happened with Naruto and the other series.
I think it gets more criticized for its mediocrity
Mm-hmm.
than it does for its lack of
Yeah.
of what it needs. Again, speaking from a writer standpoint, like I said, it plays it very safe.
It does.
It's a little bit predictable. I mean, it's not out there craziness like it does, but it plays it safe and it doesn't run the risk of ruining itself or shooting itself in the foot, or as I like to call it, cutting off your leg so it doesn't shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
But then you don't have a leg to stand on, so,
And here's the other thing I want to bring up is that predictability doesn't automatically mean it's bad. It's the execution that matters at the end of
Yes.
the day.
Yeah. And believe me, we look at stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. We do.
I mean, how many books have you written? Or at least in the process of writing? I mean, I got 3.
So I'm revising one at the moment, and I'm working on my second book at the same time.
Yeah. We're not just reading these stories for the sake of entertainment. We're also getting ideas from them on how not to do stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see how these writers just fail.
Right.
Utterly fail. I'm going to go back to Naruto again. When you waste 10, 15 years of writing everything only to go make all your characters do a 180, you're not doing it right.
Not one bit.
And then when asked, you go, I don't know, it's maybe because they're addicted to the other person. That's not how you build relationships.
That's not.
Unless you want a character to be that crazy, then go for it. But don't
Which
sit
is
here.
funny because there is a relationship like that in Fairy Tail. But here's the shocking thing, guys. If they actually spend the time in developing that relationship. I know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I'm not so mad at Erza as a character. I mean, does she pull some of the most bullshit things I've ever seen? Yeah, but
I
that's
mean,
kind of...
just take a look at Urza versus Irene. That's
Yeah,
next to
but it's kind of there. I expect that from her. I don't expect, like, I don't know, say a certain clan and a certain manga that all of a sudden has a certain eye that can all of a sudden randomly have an ability that no one else ever have or heard of in the entire series. It's almost like Urza is a mockery of those kind of tropes rather than a serious connotation of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's playing with the idea of someone just being too bullshit, as I call it.
I could see that.
And that's what makes me laugh about it. It's like One Punch Man. Like, he's gonna take out everything in one punch and not give a crap about anything. But that's what you love most about it.
Like, yeah, they're going to be beat to the bone, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know they're going to come out on top, so it's kind of like, well, what are you kind of expecting that
Yeah.
they just kind of faced it. Now, and to be fair, it's not like that doesn't happen with Urza because you do see it. It's just a very, like, super rare thing.
Yeah. It's really hard to put into words, but why does it work for one but not the other? Well, because it's expected, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm still waiting on an explanation on the Great Snake Escape. No one has said anything about that.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm talking about with forced drama.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into Fairy Tail with this notion that it's going to be over the top and silly. When you comes with Naruto, when the way it started out and everything like that, you're like, okay,
It's a series that's supposed to mean something.
yeah, don't sit here and tell me for a good portion of the series that hard work beats, destiny or genetics or anything like that, and then have the main character all of a sudden be genetically superior to everybody else.
Which I did excuse a bit, but then, like, and this has been more so since Naruto, but ever since then I've just thought more about it. I'm like, you know what? No. I'm like, isn't that kind of taking away the message that you set up from the beginning of the story? No.
Yeah. People could argue with us about this, but that's the point. You don't sit here and start out a story with one concept and then end the story with a different.
Exactly.
And then try to make excuses along the way. Like, oh, well, he worked for this, and he worked for that, and he worked for this. Okay, listen. Again, as a writer, you can design a world any way you want to. You
You
can
can.
write it any way you want to. But it has to make sense.
It really does.
I mean, if you tell me that a character has the ability to achieve the impossible, no matter how ridiculous it is, then I'm more than happy to accept that this person is going to come out of situations the most craziest of ways. I pop in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I expect this thing to be over the top and out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, the situations, as unlikely as they are, still make a little bit of sense. But it's over the top and funny, and the expressions are there, and the series knows it's ridiculous.
It does. And see, and this is something we'll go more into later when we talk about the authors, but and this more so goes into Hiramashima than anything. But when when he came up with the fairy tale, it was after he finished Rave Master, right?
Mm,
And when he finished Rave Master, I remember him saying that Rave Master was a super sentimental story, and for Fairy Tale, he wanted the next series to be a lot of fun. And the thing is, I remember as soon as I discovered that Hero's the same guy that also did Rave Master, I for the longest time kept comparing it to Rave, and I was like, look, Fairy Tale is nice and all, but it's not doing the same thing that Rave's doing, and that bothered me for like the super super longest time. But as soon as I found out that he said that yeah, it's just supposed to be a fun series, and then I took that into account, and I was like, okay, he's doing that intentionally, and I'm okay with that.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, you have the freedom as a writer to do whatever you want.
Mhm.
But you also have the responsibility to establish the rules that you're creating.
Definitely.
And tricking the reader in ways that makes them feel stupid is not a good way to make them appreciate your story.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not what you're doing, it's why you're doing it. And I think that makes a big, big difference. And like you said, with Rave Master, oh, well, this is so different from Rave Master. Well, because he treated it differently from Rave Master. It was a
Yeah,
different kind of setup, it was a different kind of mindset. And when you take that into consideration, then, oh, okay, now things are falling into place. I get it.
it does.
And if I put myself into that same mindset as the author, then things are starting to make more sense.
Right?
And this is why I'm so adamant about go beyond the story. If the writer is willing to give up their thought process, look into it, see what it means, see how it reflects on the story. You don't know what the author is thinking based on the story alone. I mean, let me take that back a little bit. Yes, you should be able to understand what the writer is thinking, but you can't overthink it.
No.
This is when you get the trope called death of a writer. You know, the example is that a teacher or somebody will look at the story and they say like, "Oh, the blue curtains are representative of their sorrow and everything with the world," and then the writer's like, "Well, I just liked blue curtains." Read a story, read it for what it is, and then if you have any questions, see what the writer says about those questions. You know, if there is an answer to it at all, and if they have a good enough answer, then you can go back to the story and be like, "Oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. That makes sense."
It does.
That was a red herring. Bullshit. You don't do a red herring for 15 years.
Right.
Mystery writers do red herrings. But the thing about red herrings is they have to make sense. It has to be a plausible outcome to the point that even the most average thinking person can understand that this could be a possibility. That's what
Hmm.
makes a red herring. And I will forever, forever, ever, 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 please watch Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg. That movie, that is the epitome of a perfect red herring. It comes to the conclusion that everything could be like this. And you think, oh, that's plausible. That's completely plausible. It makes totally sense. But then you realize that's the twist. That's not what it was. It really was just like stupid things, and everything else was just a certain happenstance. Oh, well, you didn't want to sell her business because, it could be competition for you. Yeah, normally that probably would make sense, but I really just didn't want her sharing her secrets to anybody else, so I killed her. I relish in competition. Makes me a better person. Okay, well, what about this person that did this and did that and could be a threat to you? Oh, well, really don't give a crap about that. I just care more the crap about that they're just telling other people things about me, and I hate that. You know what I mean? That's the kind of things what I'm talking about with a red herring.
I've got another example of a red herring.
Shoot.
Take the first X-Men movie.
Okay.
You think the entire time Magneto's after Wolverine, except when he gets on the train and he's the Rogue, and he's there, you're thinking, and Logan asks us, he's like, "What do you want with me?" And then Magneto's like, "Young fool, whoever said I was after you."
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
camera just shifts directly to Rogue. I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. Yeah. You? Who said I ever wanted you?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to the entire movie and you're like, oh my god, it makes so much sense.
The
Because
fact that it
whenever
also
they.
starts off with Rogue too is a nice little foreshadowing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, man.
That's an example of a red herring right there.
Yeah. And in fact, it's almost like Magneto's talking to the audience himself.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever said I wanted you?
It's like, uh-oh.
That's really hard to pull off.
It is.
But when you do it, it's amazing.
If you know you've got a red herring, the first thing you should do is make sure that it fits with the narrative. You can't just have it for the sake of having it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to turn into a big mess.
And never use it to excuse your mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, something that Fairy Tail does that Naruto doesn't. It understands its mistakes and tries to rectify them.
It does.
Even if it fails.
Even if.
We're human. We make mistakes. It'll happen. The
There's
difference
nothing wrong
is,
with that.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. The difference is whether you blame yourself or you blame the reader. And the moment you start blaming the reader is the moment you have just basically lost every dignity as a writer.
For sure.
Because that's just lazy.
It is.
Which is why I'm like, not okay with Sasuke being overpowered, but I'm okay with Urza being overpowered.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I went in looking at Urza as a comic relief. But she doesn't solve all the major problems.
No.
You notice that no matter how overpowered she is, she's only solving like the minor issues off the side.
Mm-hmm.
Or stuff that concerns only her quest. Not Natsu's quest, not Lucy's quest, just her own quest.
Yeah, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, but when you have characters start interfering with everybody else's quest and solving the problem, unless you're doing it for comedy's sake, it just doesn't work. Although I do like it if it's the matter of like after the fact kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hey, how did you get here? There was another path here, right? That went straight to this. Like we went through all that. It doesn't diminish. It just is like, it's like you're not done for what you did. You did exactly everything right if you would have went that path. But if you went the other path, it would have been so much easier.
It would have.
That's what I like because it's more poking fun at itself than it is poking fun at us.
Right.
And this is what I mean by tropes versus cliches.
And I totally get that too.
She's too bullshit. Yeah. But only with her own quest. Not with anybody else's.
Never with Natsu, never with Gray.
No.
It's only with her own personal struggles.
Yeah.
And I respect that.
All her fights, yes. All her own conquests, yes. With Natsu's, no.
Lucy's, no. None of that.
No. And that's what makes it great.
It does.
You let the characters figure things out on their own. And it also gives a good lesson.
It does.
That the universe, whatever you're a part of, is always different for everybody else.
It is. And something that I think a lot of people don't look at when it comes to Fairy Tail. Like, it's really about just people, like just finding their calling. And you get that in Fairy Tail, like whether it's with Nazi trying to find Neil or Lucy wanting to be a better celestial wizard.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but did you ever get a sense that just because it was easy for that character doesn't mean it was easy for all, like, just because it could be easy for one character doesn't mean it's easy for another?
I think there were instances, for sure.
But you know what I mean. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, oh, here's Natsu doing this, and this happens, but if it was this person, this other character in this situation, they would have just wrecked it. It's refreshing to go back and look at all these shonen where characters have their own journey, plus the effect they have on others' journey, but never interfere with the other's journey. And this is where Naruto failed. You had Sasuke not only have his own journey, but he interfered with everybody else's journey.
It did.
You don't do that.
Naruto, and this is the thing, and King of Lightning said it best, where Naruto had to sideline his entire main goal just for Sasuke.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
Now, is there a thing about having a confliction? Yeah, there is. You could definitely have a confliction. The problem is, and here's the funny thing, Sasuke brought this up too, about shouldn't you spend more time, working on being Hokage than chasing after me? And it would have been so great for Naruto to have that contemplation going on in his head. What if Sasuke's right? What if I am just spending too much time worrying about him when I should be worrying about myself? Stuff like that, I think, would have added a lot to Naruto's character, personally. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
But instead, what Kishi did was he just brushed off to the side.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, James, but that's just my takeaway for that.
I have a lot of feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
Feelings you have no idea what. Maybe you all know my idea about it.
Go for it.
It's one of my most hated things in the Naruto series. It's supposed to be a goal, not the goal.
Pretty much. That's what essentially that's what part 2 became, and I'm like, it's okay if you start off part 2 that way, but if that's the through line narrative of the time skip,
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, everything, and I mean everything, took a bad seat to Sasuke.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, from Naruto's love life to Naruto wanting to be Hokage, from Naruto wanting to live a life, from Naruto to everything took a backseat. In fact, Naruto's own life took a backseat to Sasuke.
It did.
And no. Could you start out part 2 like that? Yes. That is more than acceptable, because if Naruto growing up, that's all he knew. But as he understands more about life and everything around him, he should have grown up from that.
He really should have.
Instead of it could start out as the goal, yeah, and then eventually it develops. And I know this is a word that Naruto has a big problem with, development. It could have been a goal,
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been fine. It would have been cliche, but it would have been fine. But no, I mean, you have everything, and then you had everything, all the other stories try to tie in back to this, and that's what the big problem was. And I don't understand why. And the worst part is that all of this controversy, all of these issues, all of these things that occurred because Sasuke did what he did and the existence of him that he was, nothing was resolved of it.
Nothing.
You didn't have Sakura change as a person by understanding who Sasuke was. You didn't have Naruto understand who Sasuke was as a person. Instead, you had it the reverse, and the most cop-out, cheap thing you ever had. You just have Sasuke go, well, you beat the shit out of me. Now I'm good all of a sudden. Now I'm in love with Sakura, even though less than 10 chapters earlier I said I have no reason why.
I remember that.
693. Assholes. Chapter 693. You don't just walk away from that.
No, you don't. I mean, okay. Is there a thing called putting on a facade? Yes, but once again, this is Sasuke we're talking about.
But you have to actually show that it's a facade.
Mm-hmm.
If you had Sasuke understanding or having like trivial issues about it with Sakura, like maybe every now and then he thought about her.
Yeah.
Maybe he saw Sakura and Karen. I don't know. If you had something like that, then maybe I could get behind the concept. But you didn't,
No.
and
And
that describes Naruto in a nutshell. But you didn't. And
mm-hmm.
because you didn't, I can't get behind the decision that you made. Oh, this was my intention the whole time. Really? Because it looked like you were doing something else.
It probably was.
Oh, well, I intended this to happen the whole time. Well, then you suck. If this was your end game, you suck as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't lead anything to it. I mean, we were talking about this earlier about little to no, like, development into something, because we were talking about My Hero and the One for All and all that other stuff, and how I believe there was more info connecting to what happens later on in the story, which we can get into at a different podcast. But this is the point: was that there was breadcrumbs that led to that point,
There was.
and at least it was trying to leave breadcrumbs for it, even if we mistook them. With Kishimoto, there was nothing. There was no breadcrumbs. You just did it.
Just
And you
that.
expected people to follow through with it. And then when asked, like, okay, well, can you explain a little bit more? Well, I'll get back to you later about it. No, that's not how you write a story. You don't
Right.
just make things happen and then go, well, I'll catch you later. No.
No. No. Okay. Sure. Can you say that there was a time when Sasuke was thankful for Sakura? In part one, I'd argue yes, but that's the. And this is the thing I find so funny. It's always part one. Part one, you can say so. Second, you hit part two.
Chapter 693.
That too.
We have to understand that people can change. Change
Mm-hmm.
is the only thing that's constant. We know this from a real life fact. We know this from a story fact.
Yeah.
You want me to, oh, well, this happened in part one. Okay, well, that was part one. This is part two. Things have changed. We have characters that have established a certain thing. So you want me to believe that the characters went through all this bullshit and no change occurred. That they're just living in denial of their existence. No. Just no. It doesn't work like that. People change. People develop differently. And you can't tell me that, oh, well, this certainly occurred when you have later elements of the story saying, no, it's been like this the entire time. You can't do that to us. You can't. You can't have it both ways. And that's what I can't stand. This is what Fairy Tail did right that Naruto does wrong. You actually have the characters develop and understand and take in what they learn from the world and develop from it. It could be the same tired tropes and cliches that you know of over and over again, but how you implement them is what makes all the difference. And it's just disheartening. When you have a writer just come out and say with their own words that they didn't even know, that they didn't care, they kind of just flew by the seat of their pants because they just wrote themselves into a corner and decided for a cheap way out. That's why I like the older shonen than I do the modern, the 90s shonen than the 2000s shonen. We had Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin, and then we had Dragon Ball Z, and then in the new series we had Naruto, Bleach, and Fairy Tail. People would argue that Dragon Ball Z belongs with Naruto, but no, that's 90s. And then now we have My Hero. I don't know what the big three is now, but it's all the same thing. It really is. When you break it down at the most basic level, it's all the same thing. But what does it right and what does it wrong make all the difference. Yu Yu Hakusho and Bleach, same exact series. A kid becomes spiritually aware of things and becomes a fighter, fighting off demons and stuff like that.
I agree.
Basic premise, exactly the same. What did they do differently? Well, Yusuke's journey is more defined.
It is.
And Ichigo's is very similar. Like, oh, I'm related to this, I'm related to that. Yusuke, I'm related to a demon. Makes so much sense.
Case in point.
Yeah. Rurouni Kenshin Dragon Ball Z.
Kenshin, easy.
Yeah. It's just sad. And that's why I think a lot of people are going back to Fairy Tail and re-looking at it because, and I'm going to say this, and I'll scream it from the rooftops if I have to, Fairy Tail is what Naruto should have been.
That's saying something.
Everything that Fairy Tail did is what Naruto should have done. From beginning to end.
Here's the thing that's crazy, and James just found out about this recently. But Hiro admitted that when it came to Fairy Tail, he didn't have a plan.
He had a history. He knew where the characters came from, but didn't know where they were going.
Yeah, it was about knowing about the backstories. He knew that, but as far as the destination goes, you know, he just wanted to see where it went. I was like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's a risky thing to do as a writer, but hey,
but at least we know.
Yeah, at least we know.
And when you go back and read the series about how like I said, how the author thought they were doing the series, then it's like, oh, I could see. I can understand. And when you can understand, you can read the series better. But now, and that's why I have a big issue with Kishimoto, because when you go back and I didn't have any plan for the pairings. Well, no wonder they're so jumbled.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'm bad at writing romance. No wonder nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I originally had Hinata be nothing more than a background character that didn't do anything. No wonder she wasn't in it.
Explains so much, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I kind of only pushed Hinata to the forefront because she became extremely popular, and we thought that would be the popular. Explains so much. Explains why all of a sudden she has so much to do with the plot in the last half of it. In the war arc, all of a sudden she's doing all these things that normally she wouldn't be doing.
I still remember the one interview where Kishi was like, yeah, I thought early on in part 2 that maybe I should have swapped Sakura with Hinata. And I kept thinking, like, when?
But see, that just makes me question more. Okay, well, why didn't you? Why did you continue to push this narrative one way and then just immediately go to another? And please, you pair. Oh, it was obvious since the beginning. No, it wasn't. You know how I know it wasn't? Because during the time when those chapters were coming out, y'all were still arguing, and y'all got pissed off when things like Minato saying that Sakura was just like Kushina. And when you were pissed off of when Sakura hugged Naruto, give me a break. It's so easy after the fact, after the story ends. Oh, it was so obvious from the beginning. Bullshit.
You know what's funny that you brought that up? Because there's a moment like that in Fairy Tail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when Gray's father, Silver, talks to Juvia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he specifically asks her if she's Gray's girl. And the funny thing is, they actually, okay, they're not together, I know that much, going by what's currently going on, but you can at least see that, yeah, there's an attraction to both of them. And you see Juvia blushing at that, in fact. Being a little embarrassed, sure, but, you know, that's the difference.
Yeah. But this is why we're talking about this. I mean, this is exactly why we think Fairy Tail was much better than this, because stuff like this. You're probably wondering if something more specific, and we're more than happy to bring up examples, but if you're as fan of both series as we both are, well, admittedly, I'm not that big of a fan.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I read the series, so I'm a little bit off with some of the details, but that's okay. This is the reason why Naruto has become so controversial, while Fairy Tail isn't. Don't look at what is there, look at what is not there. People are still arguing about Naruto to this day. Every single video about Naruto, it's always some kind of discussion why Naruto and Hinata belong together. Okay, no one is going to argue why Natsu and Lucy should be a couple.
No. If anything, Natsu and Lucy kind of stems back to Hero's first series, Rave Master, where he had Haru and Ellie end up together. And if you look at the character designs, they're almost similar to one another. So, before anyone says there's no romantic development in Fairy Tail and Hero doesn't know how to write romance, I strongly encourage you all to read Rave Master, because if you see the time and effort he put into that relationship, you can see it in Fairy Tail with whether it's Gray and Juvia or Gajil and Levy. What's the other one? I said Jalal and Urza. You can see it's there,
Yeah.
and it's subtle.
Yeah. That's what you need in a shonen. And we fell for it. I'll openly admit it, we fell for it. We were so caught up in the pairing drama. That's what the series Naruto was banking on. It knew that the pairing drama was what made everything good about the series. If you took that out of the equation, the series sucks.
It does.
It does. And I encourage anybody, no matter what kind of pairing fan you are, put it aside for a moment and really think about the series.
Just as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people are going to talk about part 1 and praise it to the moon. And I'll admit, part 1 is amazing. But you also have to look at part 2. And is it good up to Pain? Yes. I'm not going to deny that. From part 1 to Pain, it's good. Now, I'd argue for the first half of part 2 pretty much up to Pain. Its flow's a little off. I wish we still had a lot of stuff in between, say, the Sai and Sasuke arc, and one arc in between the Hidan Kagsu arc and the Pain arc. I wish we got some, like, or not the Hidan Kagsu arc, what am I talking about? The Hunt for Itachi arc. I wish we had little things like that, but was the first half of part 2 still good? Yeah, it was still good. But again, that's one half of part 2. You gotta look at the other half too, and the other half of part 2, outside of Kushina, and I'm gonna stress on this, minus the stuff with Kushina, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. But you can find good moments still within the crap.
Mm-hmm.
So, Minato, great stuff. Kushina, great stuff. The four Hokages fighting, great stuff. That doesn't mean the rest wasn't crap.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the difference is that a good story has more good things and less crap. But Naruto was the opposite. It had a bunch of crap with a few good things sprinkled in. And we can take this even farther. Boruto compared to Naruto. Now, Boruto, a lot of people will tell me, oh, well, you gotta look at its own separate series. No, I don't. Because it's a continuation. It's the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's still set
considering
within that Naruto verse, technically.
Yeah. Okay, you look at Boruto by itself. If Boruto just exists and Naruto didn't, yeah, Boruto might be a good series.
But you have to separate it from Naruto. That's the big
But you have to in order for it to be good. If you keep into the fact that this is supposed to be a continuation of the Naruto series that we all know and love in the original beginning, it's crap. It's just utter crap because it undermines everything that the original series was doing. I've heard many excuses under the sun, and it's like, oh, well, you have to know that kind of dream was impossible, or achieving world peace is impossible because it's not even possible. Okay, yes, but it would have been nice if the characters themselves understood that concept.
Yeah.
You can't sit here and have a story and say, oh, it's world peace, world peace, world peace, and then destroy that world peace. It's not what we expect, it's what the story expects me to expect.
Yeah, like if Naruto actually, say grew up, and then that's my biggest thing with Naruto's character is that Naruto, at the very least, post Pain, and you can give me your take on this too, James. I don't think Naruto has much of a backbone after Pain, just as a main protagonist. Like there were instances of it in the first half of part 2, but after Pain, I don't think there was too much of it. And I always go back to this, but when he hyperventilates because they have to kill Sasuke, I'm just like, that's not what I saw when you fought me. So what the hell happened?
Does not even count like the movies like Naruto Last, where Naruto was willing to give up because Naruto doesn't love him, but not willing to give up on Sasuke the entire damn time. But that's a completely different story. But but I understand exactly where you're coming from with it. In fact, I could even argue you can take it a little bit further to the Kage Summit arc.
Yeah.
Where they made Sasuke go to the absolute deep end and be the darkest that he could ever be.
With no redemption qualities at all?
Yeah, which is great. If that's what you're going to go for, great. You want to show, because throughout the series, Sasuke was basically habitually line straddling. Oh, he wasn't evil, but he wasn't good. He wasn't evil, wasn't good. Wasn't evil, wasn't good. You know, did something bad, did something good, did something bad, did something good. It was great for a while. But then you have Sasuke finally take a step in one other direction and then instantaneously go back to the other direction with very little influence, all because my brother showed up. Okay, no. Just no.
Yeah, the second Itachi pops back up, hey, I remember things like, no, you're on this path. Stick to it. I was
Yeah,
actually fine with that.
yeah. And that's what bothered me the most about it was you can't if you're gonna make Sasuke a villain, make him a villain. If you're gonna make him a good guy, make him a good guy. If you're gonna make him an anti-hero, make him an anti-hero. Don't just keep straddling between the three and then like as soon as it's convenient, go to the other one.
Yeah,
You can do that, but it fails as a story.
it does.
But look at Darth Vader. Compare Star Wars to this. How the journey of Darth Vader. You know,
Mhm.
and throughout the three original movies, you know, he lost everything, so he was evil. Then he met his son, and things started to change for him. But it wasn't like an instantaneous change; it was a gradual. You know, and then when he saw the Emperor torturing his son, then he finally was like, "No, I'm not gonna let this stand. It's my son." So he picks up the Palpatine and chucks him into the the abyss of the whatever of the Death Star, and
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 he
then
dies. And he
yeah,
does
and
die. We don't talk about what
yeah,
happens afterwards. That doesn't exist.
yeah, and then he dies, and then what does Luke Skywalker say? I have to save you, you know, and then what does Darth Vader do? Matter of factly, you already have Luke, you already have, and then he dies. Now, as cliche as that could be, it works.
Yeah.
It works because you have the connection with the characters and everything that they felt. These are not cardboard cutouts. They're supposed to be people that we relate with, that we can understand why they did what they did, and why they changed what they changed. If you're just gonna have Sasuke be like, "Well, I don't give a shit about Sasuke," or Sakura, "I don't give a shit about Sakura at all. She could die right now, and I wouldn't give a shit." Poof, punch in the face, and all of a sudden, I'm in love with Sakura. I can't live without her, and everything like that. That's not how you do character development.
No, it's not.
That's what I like to call brainwashing. And
Hell, I'll take it a step further. Since we're talking about Fairy Tail, Jalal. When you're introduced to him, yeah, there's some shady stuff with his character, and then we find out he's the villain. Tower of Heaven, we find out what he does. We see him, wanting to get the tower built so he can resurrect Zareth. And the person that he needs is Urza, who is essentially the girl he loved during childhood. And we know that as a fact. That is fair. The thing about that, though, is he took the hit for Urza because, he wanted to make sure she was safe. But in place of that, he got possessed and he got corrupted as a child. And, that led him down this dark road. But what always stuck out to me about Jalal was, in spite of that dark path that he took, he comes back into the story. And initially, he has a case of amnesia and he doesn't remember everything. But the second he does remember stuff, he feels bad about everything that happened. He really does. What I love about his story arc is after what happened in the Tower of Heaven and after he gains his memory back, it's a road to redemption. And you see that throughout the story. He lets
yeah,
himself be taken away. And anytime he comes back in, he talks about that I'm doing all this because I want to atone for what I did for all those years. And at the end of the story, he's rewarded for that. He's pardoned by. It wasn't like, oh, you're forgiven for everything you've done. It was a long process throughout the entire story. I don't know. What's your take on that, James?
you want to know as a writing standpoint, as a reader?
Both.
Okay, so as a writer, it's what's completing the character arc. You're looking at a character as they process everything that they've done, everything they're going to do, and more. Just looking at, and that's what stories are meant to be. They're meant to It's not the destination, it's the journey, how you get there. That's why we read stories. You want to tell me that this character goes from one to the other? Great. I want to read how he gets there. And if you're just kind of like flipping a coin on it, then it's not a great. But the fact that you have a character, even in a unique way of like, okay, I lost my memory, then I start to regain it and I realize how much of a monster I am. Great. And you start to learn what makes a character tick. And then you may even have an underlying story of like deep down they're not a bad person. Maybe they did things out of necessity. And in a way that you can understand why they can be forgiven for what they do with a punishment not as severe as you expect them to get. Okay, you can have a character be killed, okay? That can atone for basically anything. You know, life for life, this for this, blah blah blah, you know. But how can a character who's done so much atone for a lifetime of evil? You make them realize that everything that they've done is evil and they want to correct all the mistakes that they made. And you do that by having them realize why what they've done is bad. And that's how you do it. That's the easy way of doing it, especially with this character. With Sasuke, you basically had him coin flip. I want to kill my brother. Okay, makes sense. Because of all the bad things he did. Okay, makes sense. Now I don't want to kill my brother. Why? Because I love him. Why? Because I just do. He's my brother. Okay. Flip a coin. Boom. Now it's the village that made him do it that I want to kill. Okay. Flip a coin again. Boom. Now I don't want to destroy the village. I want to take it over because I wanted to make it rule under me. How did you get to those thought processes? Well, he asked the Hokage about this and blah blah. It didn't really answer a question now, did it?
No, it didn't. Anything when he asked the Hokage, that was pretty much the same answer. Nothing changed. I was like, what was the point?
Yeah. And I mean, the only thing that I can think of is like Sasuke eventually went to the right answers, which is fine. But how he got to those right answers was completely wrong.
I agree.
Hey, Lucky Chi, do you know that clubbing seals is bad?
No, I didn't.
And you know how you know clubbing seals is bad?
How?
Because I'm a good person that likes animals. See, that's basically Sasuke. It's not that like, look, it's a human creature, understands pain and understands everything, will understand that all life is precious, and you know, if you look at it like we're all connected through life and everything and spiritual, and here's the thing, and here's the science, and here's this, and so you understand like, oh my god, I've been killing something that I'm connected to even on the most basic level. No, I'm just telling you because I think it's wrong, and you should understand that it's wrong. You're like, oh, makes sense. It's just really funny to me how one character in the series, who's probably the smartest out of any character in the entire series, Toby Rama, was right about everything.
Right?
But everybody's like, oh, well, he committed genocide, and he committed this, and he committed that. But he was right. I'm not saying it excuses his actions, I'm just saying he was right. And you know what the sad part is? You remember the end of the Sasuke and Naruto fight where Sasuke asks him, why do you care about me so much?
Mm-hmm.
And Naruto's like, you know, I really don't know. I just kind of do. Maybe it's because I have a connection with you. Maybe because I understand you. I don't know. I just do. I'm okay with that. But you have to have the characters understand that it seems ridiculous, but it just is. And that's what the most important part is again, something Fairy Tail does that Naruto doesn't. Fairy Tail will understand why this is ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous, but it's truth.
Yeah,
You don't have to understand why it makes sense, just know that it does. Naruto's just like, this makes sense, accept it, you're wrong if you thought anything else. You know?
No, honestly, and I'll say this. Natsu and Gray have a much better friendship than Naruto and Sasuke ever did. And I will
Yeah.
die on that hill.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
At least made me believe that they were friends.
I mean, sure. Do they have their moments like where they bicker at one another? Yeah, they do. I mean, for crying out loud, their element is fire and ice. So you were gonna have that regardless.
Hell, Deku and Bakugo have a better relationship, and Bakugo wanted Deku to kill himself.
That's saying something. No, and here's the funny thing that since we're bringing up about Naruto and Sasuke, do you remember towards the end of Fairy Tail Gray's dad, Silver, leaves him with the mission to kill END.
I do.
Do you remember towards the latter portion of the final arc when Invel, I think, was who he was Zeref's right hand man, right?
Hmm.
When he reveals to Gray that END was Natsu. You know what I loved about the scene is when he confronts Natsu, like Natsu's already become Ethereal's Natsu Dragon, right?
Yes.
The thing I love about that is that he doesn't go straight up to kill Natsu. He tries to reason with them, tries to see if his friend is still in there. And the great thing about that is, it's not force fed to us. We've seen that throughout the series. Like, yeah, they are friends. And when you see a Natsu as like this demonic entity, you feel for him. You're like, all right. And the thing that's funny is that Natsu technically is supposed to be the protagonist. So it's flipped.
Yeah. I'm much better.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on that?
It's a very interesting point where it reminds me of another series. It does. I'm not going to mention this other series because you're all going to laugh at me for it, but it's an interesting take of it. I don't know how I want to put into words. I guess the story plot of it is you want to understand what the character, who he is as a person, who they are as a person.
Yeah.
And people can surprise you.
I've got a good way to put it. It's like taking a trope and like flipping on its head.
It's definitely looking at taking an interesting leap of faith on something of a concept and really tackling it from a different perspective. But again, it makes you question yourself. Like, who would you be if you lost all your memories? Would you be good? Would you be bad? What's deep down into your soul? What is the natural instinct of what you want to do and what you want to be? There's plenty of examples of it, but it's like, just because you have different memories doesn't mean it's not you. It just makes me wonder even more, like, if you have a character, like, especially with Natsu, it's like, okay, so how did you get, before you lost your memories, this person who you were, this ethereal character,
Mm-hmm.
how did you become that? What drove you to become that? And I want to know more. Thought process. What'd you think? What'd you go through? What's your experiences? What made you believe that? Because at the end of the day, or should I say at the beginning of the day, people don't just start out evil. You have to be influenced to be evil.
And something I thought that was kind of interesting is like, at first when Natsu wakes up, like he's still in Natsu, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that triggers it is when he sees like Lucy unconscious. I remember when I saw that, I was like, oh.
What? You mean they tell me that other people can influence your way of thinking? You mean like how Sakura was influenced to be a better person because she saw Naruto, as pathetic as he was, still strive to be the strongest that he could be? What? What is this development you speak of?
Which honestly is actually kind of interesting because when Gray, comes to term with the fact that Natsu might be gone, he then mentions everything about like my teacher, my parents, and then he brings up Juvia, which I think is interesting because you could pretty much compare Gray and Sasuke because they both had girls that were head over heels for them, but the difference is, unlike with Sasuke, like you could see little hints that okay, Gray might have something for Juvia, and he is actually being nice to her. He's not like flat out ignoring her. When she does go, it makes him snap a little bit.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Especially how far Gray was willing to go for Natsu.
And I think what's also interesting is that Natsu technically was already dead. He was resurrected as an Ethereal by Zeref, who we come to find out is actually his older brother. There were so many hints, like as when Zeref showed up, like he kept talking about Natsu. And I can remember when he first ran into Natsu, he cried, and I was like, "Who is this person and why?" We didn't know anything, and then when we got that backstory, that no, he was actually his older brother, and his older brother's been trying to revive Natsu. Suddenly, all the pieces started coming into play.
But Gray also makes an impact on the story.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just there.
No.
He's not just some guffin, that he's there. And this is why it's so good. I mean, let me put it this way. Imagine instead of like Sasuke and Naruto being these descendants of the children of Jesus Christ, who was descendant of God, you know?
Which was kind of dumb, but yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if Sasuke was the demon god and was influenced by all these things and resurrected and everything like that. Naruto was the one to pull the demon god out of him. And Naruto was the one to say, I want Sasuke to have this life where his fate isn't determined, which would go against, again, like everything that fate is determined, that genetics are determined. Imagine, this is why I say like Fairy Tail does what Naruto should have done. Imagine Naruto pulling out of Sasuke, like, okay, your fate is to be this. I'm changing that. Your fate is to be the deeming of the entire world that's going to lead it to ruin. I'm changing all that. And I'm going to let you choose the life that you want to live instead of you being influenced by fate. That's what basically Fairy Tail does. It's more complicated than that, I'm not going to lie, but that's more or less the basic gist of it. That's what Naruto should have been. It should have been breaking the destinies that you were determined to be. This is why that Child of Prophecy is such a... Oh my god.
I remember that.
Oh god. If you're even gonna do a Child of Prophecy, at least do it like Harry Potter.
At least.
I mean, at least that did something where it's just like, okay, the Child of Prophecy was going to exist, but it was determined effect that this person was going to choose the person who was going to be the person of destiny. So it could have been anybody. And just like that, like Harry Potter said, oh, it could have been Neville Longbottom the entire time because we're exactly the same in almost every single way. The difference was that Voldemort came after me rather than coming after Neville, and that's what made all the difference. Boom. That's how you make a prophecy be self-fulfilling. So it could have been anybody. It just so happened to be me. You know? That's how you do it correctly. Not this, oh, you're a blonde hair, a privileged child, and it's gonna face off a guy with magical eyes.
Fight a boy with glowing red eyes. Like, okay, we already know where that's headed.
Yeah. He's gonna unite the nations and blah, blah, blah. Like, that prophecy thing. How tripped balls would you be if it realized that prophecy was about Obito and not Naruto?
It would have been much better.
Not only would it have been much better, but Obito fulfilled everything of that prophecy. Except being a blonde hair.
A shinobi from Konoha will unite all the nations together.
Yeah.
Like, you think, oh, it's going to be Naruto, and then you find out, oh, it's not him, it's Obito. I was like, oh, that makes much more sense.
That's why I think Obito and Sasuke should have changed places in the story. And you still could have had Obito die in the end, but be that middle ground that eventually comes in and understands that Naruto needs to be saved. Because you can have prophecies if you want to, but I think the most effective way to do prophecies in story is make a self-fulfilling prophecy. That you can, okay, this is going to happen, that someone's going to rise up and do this. But it could be anybody, it just things have to fall into place in a certain way at a right time. And when they fall into place, it's kind of like how I feel about the Matrix. I know I keep going on different tangents, but it's the best way I can describe it. You remember how the Oracle told Morpheus that you were going to find the one? Right? Now, what if I told you the one could have been anybody? Because it could have been anybody. It's just whoever Morpheus believed was the one would eventually become the one. And the reason why he sought Neo was because he truly felt that he was the one. It's self-fulfilling. And I think that's what makes it so great. That's how you can make a prophecy work in a writing standpoint, is you realize that the prophecy is just vague enough that it could be anybody that could fulfill it, but specific enough that you have the characters choose who the prophecy is about.
Yeah, actually, here's the interesting thing. Percy Jackson had a prophecy too. And you think it's centered on one person, but it turns out to be somebody else entirely, and it's like, oh, that was pretty clever.
Yeah. I have a prophecy for you, boy. Okay. I mean, look at Jiraiya's prophecy compared to Naruto's prophecy. Jiraiya, you're gonna train a boy that's gonna change the world. That's just specific enough to work.
Right.
I mean, he trained Nagato, he trained Naruto, trained Minato, trained so many people. Who's gonna change the world? He just automatically thinks, okay, I'm gonna train somebody who's gonna change the world. That could be anybody. As long as you keep training people, it could be anybody. Naruto, yes, there was a prophecy about you. Are you sure? Yeah, because it's about a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. Well, that's oddly specific.
Too oddly specific, if I'm being honest.
Naruto's Harry Potter's prophecy: the Dark Lord shall mark someone as his equal, and that person will be able to defeat him, and neither can live as the other one will live. That's how you do fate.
Exactly.
That's how you choose. That's how you do a prophecy. You can change who it is, but you can't change the course. I don't know. I'm just kind of like looking at this from a different perspective.
And it makes sense. It honestly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But it is going back to Gray and Natsu and everything like that. It's just, you can have your characters fight, you can have them be friends, you can have them be anything you want, but if you want them to be something more and have a
Mhm.
connection that nobody else shares, then you better make it very convincing.
You have to.
And what Gray did with Natsu, I don't think anybody else could have fulfilled that.
No.
And I think that's also why, same with My Hero, why Bakugo and Deku is such a powerful relationship, even if I didn't understand it at first.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was like, Yeah, I'm like, alright, I can kind of get it, but it's still a little weird. But
Yeah.
I'm able to get it now. I'm like, alright.
But then you get to the point where Bakugo is like, he idolizes All Might, and All Might gave his ability to Deku. So Bakugo was expecting Deku to be the most powerful. That one fight that they had, like, again, it's what Naruto and Sasuke should have been. And could you imagine if Sasuke said that to Naruto?
I can imagine that. It would have been something big for sure.
You said you were going to be the most powerful. You said that you were going to lead these people to something better. Then how could you let me beat you?
Right?
What an armor-piercing question, isn't it?
It is.
How could you let me, a broken down and evil, like arguably evil, disgusting human being, beat you who is the most righteous? Makes me wonder if you're even righteous at all. That could have been a life lesson Naruto learned.
It could have.
And I think it's one Natsu learns pretty well, doesn't he?
No, it is. Even like when you look at, say, like Natsu's battle with Agnologia, who was a pretty big deal for Natsu because, besides the fact that Agnologia is a dragon, and this is the thing that's interesting because you've got Pain, who killed Jiraiya, who was a pretty big father figure for Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
And then Agnologia killed Igneel, who was the foster parent to Natsu. Now, the difference here is obviously Naruto wasn't there to witness Jiraiya's death, but Natsu watched Igneel die right before his eyes. That's pretty big.
Yeah. But Natsu is the epitome of breaking the bonds of fate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which again, Naruto should have did it.
He should have.
This is how you describe it. Okay, Natsu, you're supposed to be the most evil thing on the planet.
Supposed to.
If not even one of the most evil things on the planet. And for a moment, he gives into it. But then, when the end of the story comes, he breaks that and understands that it's his life.
Yeah, like there was two paths he had to take. It was like either you take the dragon tea or you take the demon tea. Which one you be? And he says, "No, I'm not taking either of them. I'm just going to be me." I'm like, okay,
Yeah. It's like Avatar.
it is.
You could kill him, or you could save him, or you could do. What does Avatar do? I'm going to energy bend and take away his power so he's useless. Did it kind of come out of nowhere? Yes, but it's amazing.
It is. Now, technically speaking, Natsu did accomplish his goal, both in finding Igneel and taking Agnologia down. So he did
Yeah,
accomplish that.
yeah. But he made the choice to be his own self,
Yeah.
and not something that was destined for him, no matter what, you know.
And
And
I
that,
remember, I was going to say, and I remember when Agnologia was defeated, he told Natsu, you're truly worthy of being a king. And Natsu just says, if you ask me, I just want to be myself. I don't even want to be someone who has the title of king. And I'm like, all right, I respect that.
yeah. Like, imagine Naruto did that with Hokage.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because, oh, I can't keep my promises, but because I realized the only reason why I wanted to be Hokage was because I wanted everybody to love me, but I don't need to be Hokage for everybody to love me. And Natsu leaves all that behind to follow his own life. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need to be king. He doesn't need it for that thing. He already got everything that he possibly wants. Meanwhile, you got Naruto, who's basically, I'm going to settle for everything else, and I'm going to be Hokage because that's been my ultimate dream, but I don't really understand what being Hokage means. Just why? So many things you could do with so many other shonen, and it just fails. You fail. Kishimoto failed. Hiro didn't. Fairy Tail plays it safe. I'm not going to deny that. Fairy Tail understands that it plays it safe, even if it tries to take different paths. What Fairy Tail does better than Naruto is it doesn't try to spit in the face of the reader. And that's what Fairy Tail accomplished. And it's okay to be predictable. It's okay to go for the cliches and tropes and everything like that, but it's not okay to try to insult your reader and try to do something different and then act like, well, you didn't understand. No, you didn't explain it well enough. Same thing with Yu Hakusho and other shonen. The characters don't just ignore everything that they are or everything that they come from or everything that they've been. They understand the world that they're living in, and they understand that they have the power to influence so much, and then they choose not to. They can choose to influence other people in different ways, but they don't choose to influence people in certain ways that would demand the way that they want it to be. They understand that life is going to do as it wants to do, and that people are going to do what they want to do. And you can throw in your opinion if you want to, but it's not going to work out the way that you want it to. I just kind of wish Naruto did it this way instead. Instead of just trying to put all its eggs in one basket and reduce everything down to a city block of plot problems. Dragon Ball Z does the exact same thing. I mean, it's like, okay, you have all these universes filled with strong and powerful people, but you reduce it down to a city block. Instead of exploring the entire universe or the entire world of what it has to offer and different things that you could bring into the fold, you just reduce everything down to your next door neighbor. That's what Naruto does. It reduces everything down to what can you do next door or what can you do something else. It never just tries to expand itself on something that is much different than itself. It's not just black and white. There's many shades of grays, and Fairy Tail attacks this issue. And instead of having characters follow a certain route, you're going to have characters that evolve and grow and then be like, well, what if I don't want to make either decision?
And I'd second that opinion too. Even down to the villain. When you look at Zeref, he's not some bad guy that wants to, cause havoc and destruction. He's a pacifist. And, he wants to do things, I don't want to say a peaceful solution, but he does want to do things that don't cause havoc and destruction. And the irony to that is his black magic, which does all that. And one of the things he wants to do is for someone to kill him. And he left that up to Natsu, who, we find out is actually his younger brother.
Yeah. Ironic, because it reminds me of the discussion we had in Yu Yu Hakusho of villains who want to be proven wrong. That's their ultimate goal in life, is to be proven wrong. Again, it's disappointing. It's so disappointing. You have the world of imagination at your fingertips, and you reduce it all down to the simplest denomination.
Right.
And you do it in a way that just insults the reader, and when you have the reader question why, you just insult them more. At least admit the mistakes.
That's it.
I had this plot point. It was a good idea at the time. Now I don't think it's a good idea, so I kind of ended it quickly to move on to a different, more important plot point. Boom. That's it. Okay. I would have handled it differently, but okay. This was my plan the entire time. Well, then you suck.
Right.
Well, it wasn't my plan the entire time. Then you suck.
There's actually one more element I think Fairy Tail's actually that Fairy Tail actually does that surpasses Naruto.
And that is?
The female characters.
Yes.
Particularly with Lucy.
Yes.
And Wendy. Let's be fair. Wendy and Judy also kind of get some spotlights shining there too.
Yes. They start as one thing, and they end up becoming something much more important.
Mm-hmm. Hell, if you think about it, like, Lucy kind of started off as, like, a newbie when she joined Fairy Tail. And at the very end of Fairy Tail, like, you see how much she progresses and how much she grows. To the point that, aside from Natsu, she's also one of the key factors that's able to, not only save Natsu from, disappearing because he's linked to the Book of END because of Zerov, but what she does is she, instead of having it to where Natsu's linked to Zerov, she makes to where, and this is something that's super subtle too, that I think a lot of artists should do, she has it to where Natsu is linked with her life. And if you ask me, if you want something super subtle, I think that's the definition of subtlety right there.
Yeah. Who raise your hands in the audience. Who here thinks Lucy is useless because of what she did or did not do in the early stages of the story? Nobody? You mean to tell me that nobody thought she was useless? She cries too much. She cries. She does this too much.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. I'm like, guys, she's still technically like a new member, right?
She does this too much. She's so useless. Airs is much better. Wendy is better. Why does Lucy even exist at all? Don't hear that as often, did we?
No.
Stupid Naruto fans. Sakura is so useless. Then the moment you start being proven wrong, all you are, you're a Sakutard. You're a this tard. You're a that tard. No, we're a plot enthusiast. We understand that this stuff happens in the plot, that these things occur. Just because you're stuck in part 1 doesn't mean we are.
Exactly. The other thing I was trying to get at is, like, yeah, she's able to link Natsu's life force to hers, but the other big thing is she's able, and this is what's super important, she's able to gather everyone's magic throughout the continent of Fiore to form the fairy sphere. Trap Agnologa, and okay, it's a group effort technically that they're able to get Agnologa onto the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But she gathers magic from everybody and uses the fairy sphere to keep him stuck there. And if you ask me, if you go back to the beginning of the series of Lucy and get to the end, that's a pretty big progression right there.
Yeah. I mean, she becomes one. Doesn't she become one of the most powerful?
Yeah, she does.
Especially when she gets, like, those 10 golden keys, right?
Yeah, when she gets the golden keys, and even more so when she gets those star dresses.
Oh, the star dresses, yeah.
Yeah, like when she's able to take on the powers of her celestial spirits. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. But she starts out more or less helpless. I mean, not totally helpless, but she does start out, like, pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
But then she becomes super powerful, which, oh my god, it's almost like Sakura Hirano. Oh my god. Again, do you understand why we say Fairy Tail is a lot like Naruto, but done better?
Mm-hmm.
You can make a connection with all these different characters, but you also understand why it was written better.
And there's actually something, I think Lucy has a connection to both of us in that she wanted to be a writer, right? And how does Fairy Tail end? She gets her novel published.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, that's great. And it's not like one of those things where, like, yeah, we hear about it in the back, we hear about it from, like, time to time. No, we actually, this is what I love about Hero, is that in between arcs, we see Lucy in our apartment, and she's, like, just writing stuff down.
Yeah. Little things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Little things that seem so insignificant, but overall mean a big thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Kakashi, I got you your present. It's the latest novel in this series. Ah. We'll admit that was actually pretty funny.
That was funny. I'll put times give her part 2 hits. I was like, okay. That was funny. It was really, really funny.
See, that was another thing that was good about Naruto in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of brought out the best in people.
There's another thing, too, that I think Fairy Tail did better at. Is that not just the main characters, but it kept even the side characters relevant.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the other thing.
Nothing was wasted.
No, like Loxus gets a dude, and I'm not gonna lie. Fairy Tail first starts off, I hated the shit out of Loxus. I was like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
But then you see what happens when he comes back on Tenro Island. And when he returns to the guild, and it's a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
Hell, honestly, there's actually a few characters I can name of that kind of start off like Sasuke a little bit. Whether it's... Okay, Alox is more of a prick, so I can't really say much about that. I mentioned it earlier, but Gajio's a pretty good example. To where he crucified Levi during the... What was it? The Phantom Lord arc, I think? Just as an example on Fairy Tail being the weakest guild, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I love about that moment is like when the arc ends and he decides to join Fairy Tail, he doesn't fight back. He just tells him, look, if you have any frustrations on me, then take it out.
Yeah.
And then him and Levi have they form a deep connection with one another. And they start to grow feelings. To a point where I think by the end of the series, wasn't it stated that Levi was pregnant?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
If they weren't, they were actually going for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only pairing that became canon, technically. And we know for sure. The other ones were just basically implied.
Mm-hmm. Which, if you read Under Your Quest, they actually confirm that.
Yeah. Are you taking notes, Kishimoto? This is how you do it.
Yep.
Not just put a whole bunch of names in a hat and then pick out, okay, Choji's gonna be with this person.
I know.
But they had like zero connection. Oh well, I pulled it from the hat. It's gonna happen.
I still remember that. I was like, wait, what? Where did this come from? Like, okay, Emo and Sai, I know some people found that weird. I could kind of see that a little bit, just based off that one interaction they had. I was like, all right, fine. That's okay. Shikamaru Tamari, I mean, that was pretty obvious too.
Oh god, the Shikamaru Tamari, I always laugh about that one.
Really?
Yeah. Because if you're remembering old interviews, like, Shikamaru was the only one Kishimoto said, I'm not going to have a romance for.
You're right!
Do you remember that?
Oh
and it's the
God,
only pairing 100% of the fandom agrees with. I don't think anybody disagrees with Shikamaru and Tamari being a couple.
It didn't matter what side of the fandom you're on. You could have been Sasukarin, Sasusaku, Narusaku. Everyone agreed that's the one pairing that should happen. No one bats an eye on that one at all.
That's the biggest practical joke on that one.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's almost like finding out that Monica Rial and Vic Mignogna weren't actually friends.
Oh!
Did I say that out loud? Whoops. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, why? Why didn't Naruto do this? Not only could Naruto have done this, but they could have done it better.
You want to know something funny? You know, like how we always talk about, like how there should have been stuff in between the Land of Waves and the training exams.
Yeah.
Which was a tournament arc, right?
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing: Fairy Tail had the Grand Match Games, right? Which was, in a sense, a tournament arc.
Yeah.
But think of how many arcs we had before we get there.
I mean, we had world building.
Mm-hmm.
You mean we actually had character building before we got to a tournament arc?
Yep. And here's the thing I thought was interesting about Fairy Tail. The first major story arc focuses on Gray. Second is on Lucy. And the third is on Urza. I know some people would have said we should have gotten a character arc on Natsu, but Natsu is like technically the main focus. Well, yeah, him and Lucy technically are both
the entire series is his character arc.
Yeah.
You're watching it.
in a sense, like the entire story of Fairy Tail is technically his arc.
Like how Naruto should have been about, oh, I don't know, Naruto.
I agree.
But every time I turn the page, oh, Sasuke. How many times did we see the Uchiha massacre? I count 7.
And you know what the funny thing about Fairy Tail is when we do get the time skip? Nothing. It doesn't really change. It's all like if you think about it, Fairy Tail's kind of been about the guild, right?
Yeah.
And it's still about that, even in the time skip.
Oh, yeah. Like how Naruto could have been about Team 7.
It could have.
They say it is, but it's not.
No.
It's about Sasuke.
There's so
It's
much.
like watching a fairy tale. Oh, this is the story of Natsu. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Who's chasing after Gray? Okay, so we're going to learn anything about Natsu? No, it's all going to be about Gray. So why does Natsu care about Gray? We don't know.
I gotta.
Do they have any kind of connection? Well, they have a slight connection. What? They're both this type of person. Okay, so that's the only connection that they have, pretty much.
Yeah,
I'm not buying it. You know?
I gotta ask, James. How
What?
did you feel about the END reveal when you found out it was Natsu?
Surprised at first, but going back, it's like, oh, it was there. I could see it.
Yeah, like the little breadcrumbs were there.
Yeah, it kind of left me going, huh? Wonder why I never saw that one coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, and we saw like
Not in a bad way either. Just like, huh?
yeah, because like I remember in the Sun Village arc, they did like I think Atlas Flame talked about how Igneel could never kill END, and then we heard from Gray's dad that END was a fire demon. So I was like, are you implying that it's Natsu?
Okay. Natsu Dragneel, okay, ED. There was a fire demon, okay, named END. Oh. Wait a minute.
You're like, hold on. The ND I could see. What does the E stand for?
Eternal. No.
And then the Tartarus arc ends, and then you got Zeref like in a mansion, just going like, yeah. Is it going to be you, Natsu, or Ethereus, Natsu Dragneel? I was like, oh. And I still remember my entire thing was like, oh, well, what's your connection to Natsu? Like, are you his creator, or? And we come to find out, no, it's his brother. Just wanted to bring him back.
You know what the funny thing is?
What?
I always wondered what the term Ethereus meant.
Ethereus?
Yeah.
We could always Google it. Let's see.
I could never find a good good definition.
Well, according to the wiki, Ethereus is like it's a race of demons that were born from the books of Zeref.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the fairy tale definition.
Yeah,
but like where does the term come from? So, like, we were talking about My Hero, and like ingenium means engine in Latin.
Yeah,
which makes sense. Which means okay, he has a booster in his thighs or whatever, it's calves, and he can run really fast like an engine.
Mm-hmm.
He's all about speed. So, what does like Ethereus mean? And well, at least in Latin, it kind of means resemblance.
I could see that.
Ironically, especially in smell.
Hmm.
So something smells similar, essentially, down to the bare bones of it.
Yeah.
It really depends on what the meaning is. So something resembling something else. Can't talk today, can I? So is Natsu Dragneel resembling something else?
It's a good question.
Which may go back into the story itself of that Ethereus Natsu Dragneel is something that's resembling Natsu Dragneel. So that would be funny. Are you the ancient demon lord? I don't know. You smell like the ancient demon lord.
Dude, if we get that in Under Your Quest, I'm gonna laugh so hard. I'm gonna be like, okay, that was actually pretty good.
I guess it could be burnt smell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like looking into stuff like that, but that's just me.
No, I do too. It's my kind of thing, also. I don't know, in terms of characters, I think we pretty much got everything, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah. Well, we're basically talking about how the characters, as we know them from Fairy Tail, are basically what Naruto should have done as refinement.
Yeah.
If Natsu is Naruto, Gray is Sasuke, Lucy is Sakura, Wendy could be in Hinata, I'm guessing, but
Oh, that reminds me. I'm so glad you brought up Wendy because Chelia, who's Wendy's best friend, right?
mm-mm.
And this is something I think most shonen need to tackle because she asks Wendy if she loves Natsu, and you obviously see Wendy being so embarrassed about like, no, there's nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, Natsu's more of like my big brother, and I love the response that Chelia gives because she tells her, "Well, isn't that also, a form of love that you have, like a sibling type of love?"
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was just sitting there for hours thinking, like, you know, more shonen need to do that. Like
Well, they did that.
love just doesn't have to be shown as romantic. It can just be a sibling type of love.
Yeah. Well, Final Fantasy VIII did that
Mm-hmm. It
with
does.
Quistis and Squall, where Quistis, who was a teacher, and Squall was her student, she kind of had the hots for him.
Yeah.
And, she tried to do all these things, so she thought that she had these feelings for her. And then later in the story, I realized that I wasn't in love with Squall. I wanted to be the big sister role because I knew that he had an older sister that he looked up to.
Right.
And Quistis wanted to be that adult sister role. Again, another love story that I actually really enjoy, but still, that that's something I think because you can have many different love types and be something else. That's what I think Hinata could have been. She could have been like, oh well, I realize that I see Naruto as an older brother.
It could have been something like that.
Do we ever get scenes of like Natsu being embarrassed around Lucy in a
I,
romantic gesture?
I don't know if we did. I know Natsu can be a bit of a dense when it comes to romance, as most shonen protagonists are. I do know that one image I sent you, um, where Lucy's embracing Natsu and he's kind of going out of control, and that kind of snaps him out of it. There is, and it's a subtle thing too.
Yeah.
It's a scene where Natsu walks up to Lucy. He asks what happened, and he apologizes for it. And he says, "No, I was out of control, and I want to take not responsibility for it. That's not what he said, but he was like, I want to make up for it somehow, some way." And I think that does most of what we get.
Well, I know I don't remember any scenes of like Natsu being embarrassed. I do know scenes of Lucy being embarrassed
Yeah,
in that.
I know that's happened. Yeah, like the whole date episode when Mira Jane was talking about like how Natsu might be asking her out on a date,
Yeah.
and she's kind of getting super flustered about it. Yeah, there have been
And
instances for sure for Lucy,
and
but
oh my god, they have a scene where they touch their foreheads together.
yeah, that was during the Grand Magic Games. I remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that was future Lucy, but almost same person. Almost.
But you have those scenes of like that kind of connection.
Yes, so it's
I
obviously there.
Yeah. I don't know. Fairy Tale, I don't remember much because again, admittedly I wasn't as invested in Fairy Tale as much as I was Naruto at the time.
Yeah.
But I still do remember these scenes, especially the author themselves, like never trying to like trick the people into believing something different.
No.
And there was these moments and strong connections that Lucy and Natsu like shared, and I know there's like scenes that people think like, oh, Lucy's gonna be with Gray. No, there was a different reaction between Lucy and Gray and Lucy and Natsu that I think many people.
Even in the first Fairy Tail movie, when something tragic happens, and she asks Natsu, why she's feeling this way, and Natsu kind of reassures her, and in a much serious tone, mind you, of what that person said, and he embraces her. And funny note, Fairy Tale's movies are all canon. I think that should be taken as a note.
Yeah. Unlike Naruto.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is kind of a good way for us to transition over into themes. So, and I'll say this: I know the big theme for Fairy Tale technically is friendship, and yes, you can say the stuff about friendship is something that's a little overdone, especially for Fairy Tale, since they have a tendency to bring it up in every single arc.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and I'll definitely say that is one hindrance that I think Fairy Tail does have as a series. But you also have to look at this for Naruto too. How often after part one, okay, maybe even part one too. Like how often did we hear Naruto keep talking about becoming Hokage? And then, going into part two, how often did we hear Naruto talk about Sasuke?
All the time.
Mm-hmm. Or, in Sasuke's case, the Uchiha Massacre.
But
I don't know. I was gonna say, what's your take on it?
But did you know? But did you notice that they both have a chapter where the main character's heart stops?
You're right.
I believe it was the Alvarez arc, chapter like 460, 468, something like that.
I can look it up. Let me see.
Where, like, Natsu goes off on his own, and he wants to go try to defeat Zareth, and like he ends up coming back, but dragged by essentially Wendy, I think. If I'm remembering, I know it's a bit hazy, but like he comes home unconscious, and then Lucy realizes that like essentially Natsu's dead because his heart's not beating.
Oh, I know what volume that is.
Yeah,
I think that's 54. I think. Let me
and
remember
she
which
begs
chapter.
Brandish to like save him.
Yeah, I remember that.
Sounds very similar, but you don't really get a good sense of them being a couple until like much later, like chapter 540, around there.
Let's see here. 540. Oh, like when he just mysteriously vanishes? Yeah.
Yeah, but you have Lucy like going back through all the memories that they have.
Oh no. That's the final chapter. I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, like where she's thinking it back to everything, and then she's waiting for Natsu to say what he wanted to tell her.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember that. Which, funny enough, is something he also did for Rave Master between Haru and Ellie. Like he had a collage of like all these moments that happen throughout the series, and you get to that big embrace that happens.
yeah. But it's that one panel that makes me like again something Sakura should have done. It's a powerful moment where she hugs him and she says, "If I've never met you, I wouldn't be the person who I am today."
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking
And
at the panel right now.
I was like, "Oh my god, that's something Sakura should have told Naruto."
Mm-hmm. It should have.
And that's when that moment that you realize that. Even if like it never specifically says right at the end, you know, that they're together, it's enough.
It really is.
And if you were to end Naruto on that note with Naruto and Sakura doing that, you didn't need much more else.
No, you didn't.
Unlike a certain other pairing that needed a 2-hour movie to explain it. But you also noticed that when they always showed like past Natsu and Lucy and future Natsu and Lucy, like they do the exact same things.
They really do.
Which again, does it specifically say and come out that they're canon? No,
It's
but
implied.
it sure does have a hint at. And I wouldn't be surprised if they came up with a fairy tale like movie later down the road where they confirm.
I could definitely see that.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could have left it as it was. But I mean, it's completely up to you know.
Up to Hero? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what the funny thing is?
What?
Fairy Tail was also influenced by Dragon Ball.
That's true. That is so true. Now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say this because I know I kind of went over it a little bit with the themes and everything, but what's your take on it as a whole?
Of what?
No, like for Fairy Tail and for Naruto. Like on which one was better and which one was not better.
I think you all know the answer to that one. Fairy Tail safer and did it right. Naruto took risks and did it wrong.
Definitely.
Both have their pros and cons, but I think Fairy Tail succeeded in where Naruto failed.
Yeah. I mean,
And no, I don't want to hear it from you pairing fans and everything. Well, how did Naruto fail? Explain this one to me. He got everything he wanted. Blah 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 blah. No, that's not what we're talking about by failure. We're talking
no.
about by failure where you're talking about a story that starts from beginning to end and everything flows in a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Where Naruto fails in a writing dynamic is that you had to retcon a whole bunch of stuff and rewrite everything and make these light novels to explain everything because you had no time to explain it in the story itself. Every single time that somebody comes up to me and goes, well, if you just read the light novels, see, right then and there, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Why do I need to read the light novels to understand the main story?
No. And see, here's the thing. Technically, Fairy Tail does have Fairy Tail Zero, which is essentially the backstory of Mavis. Even then, like, the main story, references back to that. So it's still pretty integral to Fairy Tail as a whole.
Yes, but do you need to watch it to get the main story?
Technically, no, you don't.
If you never heard of that part of the story, if you never seen that, if I just say, hey, there's this extra stuff about this, were you content with what you already knew?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, the story that I have from the original Fairy Tale minus the movies or side stories or whatever you want to call them, you were satisfied. You got all the answers that you needed.
Yeah.
You didn't need much explanation. Would have been interesting to learn more about certain other characters? Oh, yeah, absolutely. But did you need to? No, because
Not
I
really.
understood that the story was about Natsu.
Yeah.
It's not about anybody else.
No, I mean, is it cool to learn about those other characters? Yeah, but it's not something you need, like, to really dive into.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
like I was gonna say this. Like, I know Fairy Tail references Fairy Tail Zero, and it might make you go like, well, okay, they brought this little thing up. Maybe it could encourage you to check it out for sure. But it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, now I have to check that out. You know?
oh, you mean the main series actually references something that could happen later down the road or a side story that occur?
Mm-hmm.
Really? You mean unlike Naruto, which pulled this villain off of the moon that was never mentioned before? Where did Toneri come from again? What's that? You had a race of ninja on the moon that was guarding the body of Kaguya? Okay, how does that, involve the rest of the story?
Pretty much.
Oh, the Gyuzomazo was Kaguya's body that they were guarding the whole time? Okay, how did Madara steal it then? When did that happen? See, if you're having something that's making me ask more questions than it answers, then you're not doing a good job.
No, you're not.
Okay, Toneri, where were you when Madara was stealing the corpse? Where was the rest of the ninja, clan? Like, I have so many questions. How are you breathing in space? And it's never mentioned again.
It isn't.
I think we maybe got one small, tiny reference of Toneri in Boruto's eye or something like that, but it's never mentioned.
No.
If you've never watched the movie, you have no clue what the hell is going on.
And even then, I'll tell you this, in Boruto, Toneri gets bodied within a matter of seconds. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me a break.
It's like you set up Boruto and make it seem like Toneri's going to have a big role, only for it to be like, hey, he gets bodied. Like, then what was the point? You know?
And the same people who tell me that, oh, if you read the Night novels, these are the same people that never watched the movie itself. Well, if you watched Naruto the last movie, which was canon, they told me that Naruto had no clue what the hell you were talking about.
Pretty
So
much.
all those moments that you loved and cared about, Naruto had fuck all know about it. I don't know what love is. You serious?
Zabuza. Case in point.
He made a cold-blooded killer who decapitates people with a knife that rebuilds itself off of the iron of the blood of its victims. But he doesn't know what love is. You have a prophecy that tells us that he's a boy who can connect with people on an emotional level, and that's what makes him special. But he doesn't know what love is.
Oh my god, this series.
Insult the reader like that.
Legit.
You're insulting the reader. You're insulting your audience to do that. That is a disappointment. And remember, it's not the fact that your reader is stupid. It's the fact that you are establishing a world that you want the reader to be involved in. And when you tell the reader that this is this, this is this, this is this, and the reader goes, okay, so my basic understanding is that this has to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. And then later down the road, you're going to tell me, well, those rules don't matter anymore. You're not a good writer. Yes, I can understand doing as pulls to get out of a situation you don't know how to get out of. Yes, I understand writing yourself into a corner and using some motives or weird writing tactics to get out of it because you want to push the story along. Yes, I completely understand that. It happens even to the best of writers. But
Yeah,
don't sit here and pretend
is,
like it's a plan the entire time.
yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, and Hero has admitted that several times. Like, yeah, like there were things that happened in Fairy Tail that I kind of wanted to, move the plot along, and I had to sacrifice a few things. I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
At least you admit it.
Yeah.
I just don't understand when many people come up to me and tell me you need to read the light novels, you need to watch that, you need to do this. They'll tell me this openly all the damn time. You need to do this. No, I shouldn't have to. Not only are the light novels not written by Kishimoto, I don't even know if they're canon because they haven't been endorsed by him.
Yeah. And
oh well, he wrote the cover art for it. That doesn't mean he endorses it.
no, and here's the thing. I know the MCU is a completely different case, but I know there have been some people that tell me, well, if you watch the shows, it'll fix a lot of the problems that Endgame has. I'm like, no. I mean, yeah, it'll improve upon it, but does that justify a lot of the open stuff that Endgame left out? And in my
Yeah.
opinion, no, it doesn't.
But I thought Marvel abandoned some of the TV shows and said, oh, they're not canon now.
Yeah.
And now they're redoing a whole new TV shows and not saying, well, it's part of the multiverse. Okay. You know, it's just dumb.
It really is.
And the fact that some of you people out there, like, willing to accept these excuses for lack of good writing ethics
Mm-hmm.
really says a lot.
It does.
I don't know. The fact that you had to go to an outside source to explain something that should have been explained in the story within itself is an issue.
It is.
Again, Fairy Tail had everything in it, and then anything that was a side story was either after the fact or it was just expanding on what was already there.
Pretty much. Yeah, and like I said, guys, like I know this so far is making it seem. I know with what we're discussing, it's like we're praising Fairy Tail, but like I said, Fairy Tail does have its fair share of problems. Yes, some of the fights tend to go by quickly. That's fair, for sure, but here's the thing. And my cousins were actually bringing this up to me earlier when they were watching Fairy Tail and why they thought it was better than Naruto. I couldn't help but laugh about it now because they said, you know what's funny? We go through multiple fights in one episode, and in Naruto, we could be spending 4 or 5 just on one fight. And I thought about that and I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of true.
A fight that nothing happens in it, they're just talking.
Mm-hmm. And that really says a lot.
And like I said, look at Erza. She's a walking asshole.
She is.
But for some reason, it's done in such a fun way that it doesn't bother me that much.
Here's another thing. You know how Naruto's like notorious for its flashbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fairy Tail's got its flashbacks too, right?
Yeah.
But they don't encompass an entire chapter.
But no. And they not repeat the same flashbacks over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And guys, this is what we mean by like as years go by, like you start noticing a lot more stuff that in Naruto that might have been good at the time, but then when you really think about it, it's like, you know, was it good? Yes, but was it good on its execution? And that's where I think it falters.
Exactly. Like I said, Fairy Tail played it safe, used the cliches, but used it in a way that was good.
Definitely.
Could it be considered that some things were predictable? Absolutely. Did it break any molds or anything like that, or go out of its reach? No. It played it safe, but it played it well. Rather a story play it safe and be something I can look back fondly on than a story that just said, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do," and to hell with the consequences. And then when you go back and as the story keeps going, and as you keep looking back at it, you're like, okay, what was the point of that? What was the point of that? What was the point of that?
Mm-hmm. No,
Don't make
I totally agree.
Yeah, don't waste my time. Don't waste development and don't waste my time. And that's what Naruto. That's the difference between Fairy Tail and Naruto. I can go back in Fairy Tail and be like, oh look, oh cool, that was that, cool. Oh look at that. Oh, I didn't notice that detail. Cool, look at that. Oh, and everything is important. Naruto. Okay, you remember the first like 12 years of the story? Just throw that out the window. You don't need that. You don't need what happens in chapter 3. You don't need what happens in chapter 110. You don't need to see what happens in chapter 325. It just watch all the filler episodes. It makes more sense. Why do I need to watch the filler episodes? Why do I have to watch something that somebody else wrote for it to make sense?
Right.
That makes you a bad writer. No matter what, that makes you a bad writer.
It really does.
If I have to read fan fiction to understand your story, you're a bad writer.
Case in point.
And you pro-enders need to grow up. You pairing fans need to grow up. Something fierce. And yes, I will admit that I was at that point at one time in my life, but I grew up.
I was too.
You know what they call that? Character development. Something you all don't even know how the concept of.
Yeah. And I mean, guys, look, I had my stuff with Attack on Titan too, but I did my best to stay out of any debates because I learned a lesson from Naruto, and that was not what I wanted to get back into again.
Yeah. Hell, I avoided debating with you about Attack on Titan because I knew where it was going.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want to get into arguments with you because you were so passionate about that series, and you, like, even if I tried, you get very defensive with me about it, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna let him figure it out on his own. And then afterwards, like after you get wounded by it, you come like, you were right.
No, see, the little tangent about this guy is like, there's a reason why there was a lack of content on my end from pretty much when it came back to YouTube, and then after April came by, I was like, okay, this is a second recovery phase I have to go to. But luckily, it didn't take me that long because it only took me like a month, maybe a month and a half, and then I caught up with Eden Zero again, and which, funny enough, is actually the series Heroes writing after Fairy Tail, and it's not in the same universe, obviously, but it's like the next thing he's doing. And I reread Wraith Master too, and I went back to Fairy Tail, and I was like, you know what?
This is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like me going back to Yu Hakusho. This is amazing.
Right. But No, and this got me really thinking about Hero as a writer because he'll have a lot of stuff in his writing, and you won't really think too much about it. But then when you go back and reread it, it's like, no, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about Hero, that I don't think a lot of manga do, like there's this whole scene in Eden Zero, and where Shiki, the protagonist, right, is talking to Rebecca,
Uh-huh.
and he's talking about like how he thought of the guild as being like a big happy family. And dude, I kid you not, there's a scene, like Rebecca's response was like, "Yeah, there was an anime or manga about that," and in the corner you just see Natsu and Lucy just like walking out of the restaurant. I was like, that's that's good.
Yeah. I'm telling you, that's how Naruto should have ended.
Should have.
Should have had like you should have had Madara be the final villain, and then had Black Zetsu arrive. Like, so you get this accomplishment that they defeated a great enemy, and then Black Zetsu arrived, and then is like, I guess it's time to bring out, like make a notion. I guess it's time to do my do the real mission while I'm here, or something like that. And then you have the movie Naruto The Last about Kaguya. At least that's how I would have done it. I think we reached a pretty good point about why Fairy Tail succeeds over Naruto. I think maybe we should start talking about um, why Fairy Tail was an overlooked and underrated shonen, among other things. Mostly because we come from where we Yu Yu Hakusho and Rurouni Kenshin, and we understood those, and we talked about those a lot, and why they're so good, and why they're a great shonen. And then you had Dragon Ball Z, which kind of is the Michael Bay of shonen, because Toriyama really is there for the action. It's not much more than that. There's no real good story about it. If you think about it, the story's pretty messed up. Like, it doesn't know what it wants to do, but in terms of action, a popcorn movie, you can watch it and it's great. But why Fairy Tail is very overlooked? I mean, I think Bleach is a good spiritual successor to Yu Yu Hakusho, but I think it was kind of rushed. I think that's what is the biggest issue with that, because um, it has the same premise. You have this punk kid that's thrown into a world that they never knew before, and they realize that they have the means to solve issues, and finding out more about their past and everything through this ancestry. But why I continue to think Fairy Tail is such an overlooked, because it I want to say it's above average shonen. It has mediocre plot issues, but overall it's a pretty decent shonen, and why it's very overlooked. It doesn't wow you.
I was gonna say this, like it's not like a groundbreaking anime or manga per se, but I do, and I have to agree with you on this, James, that it is a series that I do think is not overrated, but it does take a lot of flack for a lot of the things you do see in other anime or manga. But it's like you said, it takes the tropes and it handles it well for what it's able to do.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have all the shonens, from Yu Yu Hakusho to Dragon Ball Z, to Fairy Tail to Naruto to even My Hero Academia. It has the exact same tropes in every single series.
Oh yeah,
I can point them out as the plain as day. Oh, he's a little kid, has great powers, doesn't know he has great powers, learns to control those powers. Maybe seen as an outcast, maybe not. Maybe, has a destiny to fulfill. Has an ancestry that gives him extraordinary powers. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's over and over the exact same thing. The difference is that how you execute it.
That's the important thing.
Yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho does it right. Rurouni Kenshin does it right. Dragon Ball Z did it right in the beginning, but now that we got into Super, is kind of just saying like whatever.
It's kind of a mess now.
Yeah, it's kind of just, I don't know. It's like Team 4 Star. They're just making jokes just to make jokes at this point. Fairy Tail does it right. Naruto completely blew its entire load. And now we have My Hero, which I'm hoping will go back to that quality that we're all know and love from like the old days, but give it a new twist.
Definitely.
I keep my expectations low about My Hero, but I will say it's doing a lot better than Naruto did. That doesn't mean it still can't fail, and it still has plenty of opportunities to fail.
Definitely.
Black Clover, never seen it. Don't know if I want to see it. A lot of people tell me I should see it. Don't know if I have time to see it.
That is worth checking out.
I wonder what the next big three is going to be.
True.
Whatever it is, One Piece is going to be around.
Oda will be ahead in the tube with mechanical arms, still plugging out chapters.
Yeah. Brain in a jar with a mechanical body.
But I think we've kind of talked enough about where things are, both with Naruto and Fairy Tail, and why we think Fairy Tail is actually better than Naruto,
Yeah.
just as a whole. And honestly, I gotta say, James, it was a lot of fun, doing this discussion / podcast video with you
Always.
after such a long time.
Yeah, always. Especially with people like us who actually, branch out.
Yeah.
Like, well, a lot of anime fans I talk to, they're only into Dragon Ball Z and Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they know One Piece and Bleach, but like they don't branch out from that. And can you believe it? I'm being picked on. Like I'm having people like look down on me because I like other stuff.
Right.
I mentioned I watched Rising of the Shield Hero, and they looked at me like I was like nuts. I was like, you do know the light novels have been around a lot longer than the anime has, right?
Same thing with Sword Art Online.
Yeah.
That could be another discussion video we could tackle too. That's some
Goblin Slayer.
Goblin Slayer is another one.
You were raised in the anime. I was born from it. It's just something I've been hating a lot lately.
I can totally agree with you there.
Like, don't make fun of me because I'm actually into more anime than you. Is there anything else we should last discuss?
No, I think we pretty much tackled everything.
Okay.
For the most
Well, I'll just say this: if there's any other series you all want us to like take a look at or analyze for you, please give us a shout out.
Yeah, do let us know.
Yeah, I mean anything. We have a wide range.
Yep.
So
whether we're talking about anime gems or whatever this new thing's going to be called. Wait, is it actually blank blank?
Wait, is it actually? Next time on Wait, is it actually? Is Dragon Ball Z actually a good story? No, it isn't.
And on that note, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Lucky G7.
I'm James S Cassidy.
And we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Later.